Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here with us
Morning.
today. So my name is Rachel. I'm part of the organizing committee for My Mind on Film, and I'll be the MC for today's webinar. So firstly, I would like to welcome everyone to our second festival webinar titled My Mental Health and How to Take Care of It. So it's still pretty early in the morning, but I hope you guys have had your breakfast and coffee. Yeah. And yeah, I hope you guys are well prepared to learn more about today's topic with our speakers. So this session will last for about 1 hour. So feel free to just relax and settle down, get comfortable, and just enjoy the session. All right, so before we start, I would like to do a little bit of housekeeping. So we hope to be able to end the session by 11:30 a.m. And we have dedicated the last section of this webinar for Q&As. So if you guys have any questions throughout the session as it's going on, then maybe you might want to note it down somewhere, note your questions down somewhere, and then you can bring it up later during the Q&A session. All right, so lastly, also do feel free to leave your videos on as we would love to see all your faces. And yeah, just make sure to mute your mics when the speakers are talking so that it doesn't disrupt them. All right. So just a bit of an overview of My Mind on Film. So My Mind on Film is a youth mental health film festival organized by the Center for Mental Health and Wellbeing, or CMHW in short. So CMHW is a collaboration between Help University and the Malaysian Mental Health Association, with their conjoined mission being to improve mental health at a national and regional level through research, training, and thought leadership. So My Mind on Film itself targets youth and young adults in hopes of inspiring them to share their perspectives and ideas on mental health. So through this festival, we also hope to break the stigma around mental health and also to expose the public to benefits of being well aware of your own mental well-being. So this is very much in line with today's conversations about how we can care for our mental health. And if you're interested to know more about My Mind on Film, you can check out the website, which I will now send in the chat. Yeah, so yeah, here you will be able to find all the details about our project and our social media pages and other resources, such as guidelines for filmmakers and the safeguarding policies and so on. Also make sure to check out our Instagram and Facebook pages, as we have just uploaded some interactive content that you can sort of check out and do for yourself. All right, so make sure to check that out. And now, without further ado, let me introduce our speakers for today. So first, we have Prof. Dato Dr Andrew Mohanraj. Hi, Dr. Andrew. Hi, morning. Okay, so Dr. Andrew is the current president of the Malaysian Mental Health Association and also the board member of the World Federation for Mental Health. So he previously traveled to countries such as Indonesia, Philippines, and Timor-Leste, where he did pioneering work in providing services for individuals who were struggling after natural disasters hit their countries. And he later returned to the country and now runs his own psychiatric practice in Mont Kiara, while also providing services to refugees and asylum seekers. Yeah, all right. So next we have Datuk Munirah. Hi, morning, Datuk Munirah. Okay, so Dato Munirah is a consummate entrepreneur that has combined a dual career of entrepreneurship and social work for almost 5 decades. So she previously ventured into the IT field and later into the field of bioinformatics, where she co-founded companies that ran genome sequencing and provided genetic screening services. So Dato Munirah is also the current president of the PERTIWI Soup Kitchen, which aims to help people achieve financial independence by activities such as feeding the homeless, providing medical services, job placements, and such for them. And next, we have one of our own committee members, Saladin Podel. Morning, Salah. All right, so Salah previously completed his diploma in early childhood education, and he's now in his second year of degree in psychology at Help University. So he's very committed to normalizing conversations around the topic of mental health, and he has also contributed to Help's own Psychology Student Union as an international student representative, and also as the chief assistant editor of the Psych Chronicle, which is the Psych department's e-newsletter. And lastly, we have Tamar Chang, who is a clinical psychologist at the Malaysian Mental Health Association. So she has worked with organizations such as Dignity for Children Foundation, the UN Refugee Agency, and also Girls Brigade Malaysia. And Tamar will also be our host for today's panel discussion. So I will now invite her to proceed. Hi, Tamar.
Hi, thanks, Rachel, for the introduction. So before I start, let me just share the screen. Okay, so good morning, everyone. I'm Tamar. Thank you for joining us on a Saturday morning. It's really encouraging to see such a huge turnout, and very exciting to know that all of you have come here to talk about mental health and to ask questions and give opinions about it. So I'm particularly excited today because we have a team of mental health professionals and mental health advocates here to share their experiences and share tips and advice, teaching us how to take care of our mental health. So just before we jump into the panel discussion, I would want to give us a bit of context so that we are on the same page here today. So according to if you can turn your focus on the screen, mental health is something, especially in Malaysia, that still holds a huge stigma to it, and it's not much talk about. But the fact of the deal is that we all have mental health, and many of us will experience mental illness at some point of our lives. So mental health is different from mental illness. Mental health is actually a state of well-being, and there's a spectrum to mental health. So you can be on the good side, and there are times due to environmental factors or even biological factors that you realize you tend towards the other side. Good mental health is indicated by resiliency and productivity when you find that you're able to function well in your daily life. So on the other hand, mental illness, though, is actually a very real condition that affects the way we think, the way we feel, our moods, as well as the way we behave and the decisions we make in our life. So you might realize there are certain points in your life where you struggle to function effectively in your daily life. And if left unaddressed, this might develop into mental disorders such as depression and anxiety. And in fact, looking at the current situation right now with the COVID-19 pandemic, the mental health professionals in Malaysia have received much more influx of cries for help because this has really put a huge stress on our mental health. Okay, so with that bit of context, we want to jump into our panel discussion for today. And I believe that through that discussion, we will gain more nuggets of wisdom and insights about the mental health situation in Malaysia, as well as the practical steps that we can do. Okay, so we have some, I'll just stop our screen sharing. Okay, so Professor Dr. Andrew, Datuk Munirah, and Salah. So we'll be heading into our panel discussion for today. So the first questions, let's start off easy. Before we're able to do anything about mental health and mental illnesses, how do you think we can recognize good mental health from poor mental health? How do you think we can recognize good mental health from poor mental health? What are the signs and the symptoms? So whoever is ready, perhaps you can start the ball rolling first.
Andrew, your mic's muted. Dr. Andrew.
Sorry about that. Yes,
Right.
Tamar, you had actually mentioned it in your introduction itself. What is good mental health or well-being? I mean, I don't think there's a real sort of a clear definition for that. But universally it is accepted. As you said, it's a spectrum, and the fact that we all have our good days and bad days doesn't mean that we, we have mental health challenges. I mean, we are all entitled to good days and bad days, but what would mean when that we are having some issues or with our mental health is when certain signs and symptoms seem to be very pervasive and last for a sufficient period of time. And it's good for us to know some of this and what to look out in our colleagues, friends, and probably try to assist them, help them find right support. And when you speak about what is good mental health, what comes to my mind is the fact that it's a state of well-being where we realize, all of us realize our own potential, but at the same time we also know our own limitations in everything that we do in life, and with that ability to understand ourselves, our potential and our limitations, we are able to cope with all the normal stresses of life. And in addition to being able to cope with the challenges of life at home, at work, at school, in when we meet our neighbors, our communities, we are also at the same time able to lead a productive life. We're able to be gainfully employed. And more than that, ultimately, we are able to make a contribution to the lives of those around us, not only family, but our community as well. I would think that would constitute good mental health.
Mhm. Thanks, Dr. Andrew. I think that one thing you say that really struck me was you say that we all have good days and bad days, but what is alarming is when it becomes pervasive and long-standing, that you try to cope with it, but you're unable to cope with it, and that's when help is needed. Right.
Yeah.
May I please say something?
Yeah, sure, Dr. Munirah. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I think for myself, when I recognize, that it is, oh dear, I'm not feeling too good. When I go out to feed the homeless, for example, I think it's also to help myself. It's not just helping others, because when you go out and do something for others, somehow it makes you realize that you're not the only one. So I always encourage students to do something together. When you start doing something together and you bond and you unite, and especially if you do something for others, it is a good way to overcome your own worries about yourself. And for the people that we feed, for example, I notice that if anyone is becoming agitated, normally, among the homeless, you find that there are many of them who have some kind of problems in relation to their mental health. Some actually have mental illness, but the ones who show signs of suddenly, you find that they are agitated for no reason, and they become more angry for the slightest wrong. Somebody jumps in the queue and there you go. The food is thrown away and that's something not right. So gently we have to approach them. You can't say that go and see a counselor or whatever, it's not going to work. So it's always the gentle approach. So the way I see it, we must always look around us and see who is actually reaching out for help or for someone to listen to their problems. And it's not always, the cry for help doesn't always come, please help me, I'm in trouble, or it comes in some other form, like you see them pacing around or doing something which you say, hey, why is this person doing this? It looks a bit odd. So you have to be observant, not just be observant, be compassionate, not just say, oh, right, and that person is like that. That stigma has to go. Just be kind. Yeah?
Right. Thank you, Dr. Munirah. So what you're saying, what I hear is that that oftentimes when people are going through something, perhaps they don't even realize it themselves, but you can notice it through like their agitation or that pacing around, and you notice, hey, something is wrong here, something that I need to investigate. Yeah, and something you say that you can play a part in this is that you can just go over, you can ask them what's wrong. You don't need to be a healthcare professional to do that.
Just to
Yeah.
listen sometimes, and not
Yeah.
to force it out from them. Just, are you okay? Would you like to have a drink or something? Yeah, just like that. Just a friendly offer of, someone who's willing to listen.
Right, to show that they're not alone.
Yes.
Yes, amazing.
You know, as
Okay.
Tamar had mentioned just now in your introduction,
Mm.
that really when you talk about people having mental health issues, or some form of psychological distress or decompensation, it could be any one of the three components you mentioned, or two, or even all three components. Basically, it's affecting their thinking, their feeling, and their behavior. But people who are struggling with their thoughts and their feelings, sometimes this is not necessarily so obvious for the rest of us. But what, as Dato Munirah just now mentioned, you could see some of the odd behaviors. Sometimes people might be irritable, or even um, perceive them to have pervasive sadness, or excessive fear or anxiety. These are things that we actually look out for when you talk about signs and symptoms, and not just odd behavior that is very obvious as well. But in most cases, what will really stand out is the fact that people would have had significant decline in the functioning in schools, for example, school performance, or in the workplace, the work performance is affected. So it's very significant changes compared in or seen in a person that you think that you knew. So I think these are things that we really must look out for. And kind of signs that you will see a steady decline. And of course, there could be social withdrawals people have, even in among work colleagues, but sometimes for either because of some personal issues that they are going through a particularly rough patch. It might be work related, it may not be work related, and suddenly start abusing substances or drinking more than they normally would drink, or smoking excessively. These could also be ways in which people try to cope with their stress. So it's good to just as Dato Munirah just now said, just to say, are you okay? I mean, how are things? Would you like to have a chat? Would you like to have a cup of coffee? Things like that might pave the way to find out more without being too intrusive, and to suggest where they can reach out for help. But the fact is, this is a very complex situation, and it is not that easy to know, how people suffer within themselves, because our culture also, in our culture, we don't talk about things like this so openly. So that's a major barrier, I would say, in seeking help as well. And sometimes it's easy for us to say that people should be more open about their mental health issues and talk about this. But when a work environment is not supportive of people with mental health issues, how do you expect people to openly speak about their mental health problem? World where, if somebody has got mental health problems, and they've overcome that, or they're taking medications for that, and they're perfectly all right otherwise, just like somebody else who would be taking medications for hypertension or diabetes. Yet when it comes to that crucial, that promotion, you exclude that particular person because he or she has mental health issues, or previously 5 years ago had some mental health issues. So this sort of discriminatory practices are so inbuilt in our system. So you can't really expect people to be so open. But interestingly, I think in that little short film clip that you showed just now, I was quite interested with the fact that the emphasis was on reaching out to others, but not all of us have too many people to reach out to. In fact, most people in this world will probably have less than 5 friends, however popular, how many likes they have on Facebook. But uh, uh, your clip emphasized the fact that at least have one person to reach out to, and that makes a huge difference, really.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Andrew. I think that was really helpful. And you even brought it into talking about the culture and the stigma that comes out of the culture and why it's so difficult to seek help. And so I'm curious about the ground level perspective. So Salah, one of our panelists, who is a student at Help University. Salah, what do you think about this?
First of all, a very good morning to everybody. Very glad to be here. So like Dr. Andrew and Dr. Munirah mentioned some really good points on how to spot mental issues. So I'd like to build on more on how do I see a good or accepted level of mental health itself, not necessarily issues. And for me, that comes with an internal acceptance of the fact that life can both go right and wrong. And there won't be any defined distance between these two. So we don't know when life's gonna go right or wrong, but the moment you accept that it's gonna happen at any time, it prepares you mentally for what's about to occur, even though you don't really know what's gonna occur. It's just that you have accepted whatever gonna happen, like, okay, I have accepted the fact that it's gonna happen. So when it happened, I deal with it. And the other acceptance is towards oneself, actually, like I might be having some weaknesses and some strengths. So that's who I am. The fact that I have some weaknesses doesn't make me I don't know, worth any less, or the fact that I'm strong in some points makes me, any more worthy compared to any other person. That's merely a definition of who I am, nothing more, nothing less. So to reach that point and that understanding about oneself and about external events that's gonna happen, that I believe helps a lot with maintaining a very stable level of mental well-being. And the other thing that comes to play, especially among adolescents, young adults, it's the fact of comparison. Like we really tend to upwardly or downwardly compare ourselves to one another. I mean, well, it has its advantages too. Well, sometimes it encourages you to do better and be better, but not necessarily all the time. And often it results in some sort of distress, the more you compare yourself with others, because you're not really in their position and you don't really have the tools that they have. So the outcome will be, of course, a unique outcome. So that's how we look at it. It's a unique outcome. It's not necessarily a bad or a good outcome. It's it's yours. So what I do and what I believe in to do is like to compare myself with who I was yesterday, what I was doing yesterday. So if I'm able to observe the progress that I've been making from yesterday to today, and if I conclude at the end of the day that today I did slightly better than yesterday, then that's cool. I don't need to say like, okay, how much he's getting, or like what grade she got for this subject, or what accomplishment did they make. It's not really about those things. It's not an easy process. Probably it takes really like a great deal of effort to come to that understanding. But after that, things become, I think, way more bearable and easy. So that's the way I see it, and I define stable mental health or well-being.
Okay, thanks, Salah. I think that that's really interesting that you mentioned the comparison that young people have of each other, especially in this time of social media, right, where you can just go Insta stories and it seems like everybody else has a great. Yeah, but you mentioned that, you know, perhaps it's good to compare yourself to you yesterday and notice the progress, and that is one way that we can, you know, maintain that kind of healthy mental health.
Salah has a very high level of self-awareness, you know.
Right.
Salute.
Very good observations as well. So since Salah has started us on this topic, what are, to the other panelists, what do you think are any tips or hacks, you know, that we can help ourselves have developed that good, healthy mental health?
Well, I think Salah has, you know, really, I mean, he took off a little bit on the spiritual tangent, which I think is really important because ultimately there are things, especially now in this COVID pandemic, really we begin to understand how little we know of what's happening and how little control we have over how things unfold. And I think personally also, I just sometimes have to just say that there's a greater plan working here somewhere, and we just got to a large extent say that what will be. But at the same time, we need to also optimize our functioning here and try to make the best out of things. How many of us really ask ourselves or feel grateful for the fact that we can be here today and interact with each other on Zoom, where you know there are many other places in the world which they don't seem to have that kind of a luxury. There's so much of confusion even in societies that are supposed to be very advanced on how they're going to cope with COVID. And that's why I think the angle that Salah took just now is very good. And I, for one, cope with the fact that I might not know that I'm thousands of kilometers away, marooned in a small Pacific island nation right now. But one of the things that helps me cope is the feeling of gratitude that I can wake up yet to another day and continue to do what I can do. And in order to maintain my good mental health, I try to stay connected as much as possible with others. I always ask myself, what if we had this COVID pandemic, say, 20 years ago or so, when we didn't have all this Zoom and you know whatever else to keep us connected to each other, WhatsApp, you know, technology where you have a video call. You know, those days as I was growing up, we only saw that in James Bond movies, and never did I imagine that one day we could have this technology. But this has helped us so much to stay connected. And really, when people complain about saying not staying connected to one another, I sometimes wonder whether we have taken full advantage of technology. There are people who tell me that during this pandemic, they have stayed more connected to each other compared. I think I'm breaking up. Yeah. And they've been staying more connected to one another during this pandemic. We have reached out to people whom we only have as friends in our Facebook, but don't even utter a single word with them. But during this pandemic, we have reached out to people to ask how are they doing. So there's this technology that we must take full advantage of. We can even have a cup of coffee. I see some people drinking here water or coffee. So we can actually have have coffee with somebody else, whether it might be virtual, but the fact is that is also possible. I think the silver lining in this pandemic is something that needs to be appreciated as well. I, for one, have learned a lot of lessons from this, and the fact that I've taken things for granted all this while in my life now also tells me that I must pay attention to all this little bits and pieces that actually makes up our lives and makes our lives full. Of course, again, I mean, this has been discussed many times before in various panels. the fact is, if we want to maintain our sanity, so to speak, we do have to keep a routine. We got to exercise, and strangely also, this technology again is a double-edged sword, clearly, because as you know, the feedback that I get from students and people working from home, they speak about how the fact that now they work from home, and students are also, doing their studies from the UK, and some of them were saying that because of this technology that is available now, there is no demarcation between personal life and work life, or the demands of university, and lecturers are bombarding students with Zoom calls and Zoom video conferences, and employers or bosses are asking their subordinates, whenever they like, they just send an email or arrange a Zoom conversation. So all these are getting blurred as well. So I think the overuse of technology is also something that we must be very cautious of. And demand thing, simply because there's technology doesn't mean you just pick up the phone and say, listen, what happened to the assignment I gave you yesterday? I need a report before midnight today, and things like that. There's a lot of blurring of boundaries here. I think that is one of the challenges of this COVID now, and we have to be careful about the technology involved in that. Thank you.
Right. Thanks, Dr. Andrew. I think that what I pick up from what you just said was staying connected is really important. And knowing that, there's people around you that can support you, maintaining a routine, secondly, is also very important. And also protecting that personal space that you can have for yourself. And then lastly, what I really like about what you just say is that I really can feel the posture of gratitude that you're coming from. Just saying, have we asked ourselves whether we are thankful for where we are today, what we are able to do given the opportunity. So that gratefulness is really, really important. Thank you. Datuk Munirah, do you
yes,
have?
gratitude is very, very important,
Right.
because without that, we will just be saying, oh, why me? Why me? Why is my life like this? You see? So we start with that. But then at the same time, for those around us who cannot see that we have to be grateful for where we are, they've plunged really low. We have to try to reach out somehow. Yeah. So what I try to do, if someone's been too quiet for too long, we try to organize little events. Like today, we've got groups going out to give Deepavali hampers in Malacca and everywhere. It is difficult. We've got to get permits. But then again, even the packing of hampers, getting of permits, all that, get people, small groups. We cannot have big groups. Otherwise, you end up with a cluster somewhere. So we've got to do all that. But getting them organized in an activity to help someone else, that seems to have brought some of the quieter ones out. We have got to somehow keep on thinking, coming up with new ideas. Salah, you're good at that. Come up with ideas as to how you can organize activities for everyone. Feeling grateful, yes. We know that how thankful we are, but we must realize that there are some people who cannot see even that, yeah? And being, since March, we've been cut off from our regular, our previously normal life. And all we see is just the four walls. Some people have become withdrawn. I have seen many who are just so quiet. And that is unusual. So try to do that. If you realize, so I've not heard from so-and-so for so long, just do it. Don't be so aggressive, yeah? Just do it subtly. Christmas is coming up, end of year. Why don't we do something nice, organize baking for the girls or for the boys even? They're great, they're great at baking things. Let's do something for the old folks home or whatever. And we can all organize small activities like this and not just to help them, but to help ourselves as well. And then it'll be really cool. It'll be fun, believe me. And, we'll all feel thankful for that. And that is a new way perhaps of celebrating the new year. We have to look forward to that. The malls are too quiet already. Let's do something fun, some fun in a different way. Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Datuk Munirah. I think this is a very interesting thing where just now we were talking about looking into ourselves, being thankful, being grateful, keeping connected, but beyond that, going outside into the society and contributing and helping people out there is very important for our mental health as well. And I'm really excited at the ideas that you just mentioned. Like, it got me like inspired now. I know people who like do art or calligraphy and send these cards to friends. And that's an amazing activity where you can express yourself, but you can encourage people around you as well. So thank you for the ideas and really appreciate this. Okay, so since right now we are...
Can I add something?
Yeah, sure.
Emma, can I just
Andrew, yes.
add just one more point to what Munirah mentioned just now? The fact is that sometimes we tend to paint everyone with the same brush here and say that, we are all going through these difficulties and, we just have to be strong and stay connected and try to make the best out of things and out of life. All that is absolutely true. But again, even as a mental health professional, sometimes I tend to forget that in this difficult situation, there are some of us here who are more vulnerable than others. There are some people who have battled with depression previously, perhaps, or continuing to have some anxiety issues. There could be some of our friends and people whom we know who may have had problems with some psychotic illness, for example, and they're on medication. These are people who are going to be extremely vulnerable now, despite all the support we give them, all the connections we have. This is the moment when they're going to be extremely vulnerable, to get a relapse, perhaps. And this particular group needs to be paid additional attention. And as much as possible, we can't just take it for granted that they will look at things the way we look at things because they are more vulnerable. We must ensure that they're given all support possible, access to medical care, access to mental health follow-up, to ensure that they have adequate medication with them. And this is something that is also good for us to know and keep in our mind. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Right. Thank you, Dr. Andrew. I think that brought the gravity into the situation where that acknowledgement that people are struggling and people do need help, whether it is ourselves or other people, and keeping that in mind is really important into that first step. Okay. So since due to time limitations, I think right now we want to hear from our audience and participants here today. So it's a great opportunity to ask questions from our panelists as well as our team regarding any mental health related things that you have always been curious about. So right now, let's open the floor for question and answer session. So if you would like to ask a question, you can feel free to unmute your mic, or you can just type it in the chat area and bring your questions forward.
Let me begin if no one's jumping right in while everyone's thinking of their questions. So thanks to our panelists for sharing these ideas and giving us these insights. I want to pick up on what a few of you have said, but particularly Dr. Andrew mentioned about the double-edged sword of technology. And I think we can all recognize that. And I want to ask Salah, particularly from his perspective, because I feel as though young people, because they've grown up around technology integrated into their lives, particularly social media in such a different way, do you have any ideas about what people might do to optimize the benefits of all of these things and reduce the risk of these things?
Well, I can say we recently had, I can refer to Dr. Eugene for this, because we recently had a workshop with him. And what we did is like nowadays you have that option in your phone that you can check how many hours you're on screen. And then it gives you the details of, you know, what apps you use the most. So is it WhatsApp? Is it like Instagram? Sometimes we just use it and we don't know for how long we've been lingering on that post or that app. You know, hours can pass and we don't realize it because the videos, this is very tricky about, especially Instagram, because the videos are usually like 1 minute long only. You know, you say, okay, I'll watch this video and it's only 1 minute. And then comes another interesting, you know, video after that. Okay, it's another 1 minute, not a long time. I can spend like another 1 minute on this. You know, and 1 minute and 1 minute and 1 minute. And sometimes, you know, it happens to me too. And I have so many things to do, but I get caught up with this Instagram thingy. And when I realized I've been watching some useless stuff, you know, for probably 45 minutes or an hour, and all I thought in my mind was like 1 minute, you know, but it's not 1 minute really. It's like 45 minutes, it's 1 hour, you know, 2 hours. So one way to like deal with it is since you're given the hours, the stats on like how many hours you're spending on particular you know, apps, probably you can set goals. I mean, what I do is it gives you at the end of the week, it tells you how long have you spent on the screen on a daily basis, and you know, it tells you if it was up, it was down, and you know, sometimes mine goes up to like 9 hours a day, and I'm like, what? You know. So what I do is like, okay, if this week was 9 hours, then probably like next week I'm gonna reduce it to 8. Don't need to take like a big huge step, you know, that because the bigger step you take, the higher the chance that you become disappointed at the end, you know, because you're gonna like fool yourself with the idea that I can do it. Yeah, of course you can do it, but like take small steps, you know, one step at a time. So that's probably one way to deal with it, I can say.
Nice. Quick follow-ups. So I wonder, like, is all social media made equal? Because, you know, often we think about the amount of time we're doing it, but maybe when we're using it, are there strategies for kind of making sure that you're self-filtering? Because the other thing is, because of the algorithms, everyone's in their own little echo chamber and being fed, you know, the stuff that's maybe not the best thing for them. It's the thing that's going to hold them to the screen, right? Because these things are very sophisticated in taking our attention. In terms of sort of deliberately monitoring your own attention and what you're consuming, do you feel like there are certain platforms that are more conducive to healthy behaviors or like more edifying experiences? You know, would you not where you can name any of them? So is it, because we often talk about, you know, how many hours we're on it, but other ways that you can actually use it to real advantage? Because the evidence suggests, and it's, you know, it's a bit that if you use it in the right ways, it's really good for you. If you use it at the right times, it's really good for you. But otherwise, it can be pretty detrimental.
I mean, there are a lot of platforms, learning platforms, you know, it's not necessarily, as you say, bad. It depends on what you focus your attention to, you know, and that goes back to your personal goals. Actually, like, this is a big topic. I can't really like say who likes what and like give a general, you know, advice to everybody. But if one comes to a conclusion that they want to do something with life, it comes from that perspective. Actually, it's if you don't have that mindset prior, you know, using social media, then probably you won't use it wisely. So it all comes from there, you know. So if you really are up to something, you know, like up to growth or like do something better, like there are free courses out there and short courses. We have LinkedIn Learning nowadays, which is like, you know, courses can be like as short as half an hour. And how to speak impactfully. We have Coursera, you know, which is like a massive free platform to learn, and the courses are really good over there. So it comes from the mindset, you know, on what you really want to achieve in life. And if you don't really have a direction, then yeah, you're going to end up somewhere not really appealing in, you know, within social media. You know? Right.
No, cheers. So that makes sense. And I guess again, kind of that means that you've got to find that headspace that, because often we don't, because we're sucked into it. So to step back a bit and actually think about what your strategy might be with using it, that's great. Cheers, Salah. Appreciate it. All right. Thanks, Tamar.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Mark, and thanks, Salah, for the insights. Let's go to some questions that we have in the chat. And feel free, anyone on the team or any guest panel, feel free to take the questions. Is mental illness and mental disorder the same thing? First question. Dr. Andrew?
Do you want me to answer that?
Yeah,
Oh,
sure.
okay.
I guess
So,
you'll be the
well,
best to answer that.
okay, it's interesting. I'm quite interested that this question was brought up because, you know, over the years,
Dr. Andrew,
the
your
usage of
connection's
the
going
words
back.
illness and disorders, corrective disorders have been interchangeably. Hello? Hello?
Yeah, you're back, Dr. Andrew. You broke up from me. You could begin again with that differentiation.
Yeah, so the term illness, mental illness and mental disorders have been used in a period of time, really. And mental illness, can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes.
Hello? Okay. So, yeah, the term, mental illness and mental disorders have been used interchangeably for quite some time. But generally, mental illness can also refer to a collection of signs and symptoms, whereas disorders are very discrete and very specific as to what exactly is that particular disease entity. Now, over the years, people have thought that the word mental illness is perhaps, although can be a bit vague at times, but it is more appropriate because it refers to some sort of a pathology in the body, in the genetic component, or some workings of the body and the brain. And therefore, it makes it more real, more acceptable that when there is an illness, you got to do something to treat the illness. Whereas a disorder gives the entirely something that is wrong with the body or the brain, but it be something is not, what should I say, blaming the individual or something that is not very specific in nature, and it takes away or rather puts the blame on the individual, and it is seen to be politically incorrect way of approaching this disease entity. That is my understanding of it. Although I must say, for specific purposes, we still continue to use the word disorders in order to fulfill the diagnostic criteria. But you know, the world over, people are not looking, not accepting the use of the term disorders as it was used before.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Andrew. I hope that answers the question from Agathia. Tian Wei, I think that you have a question, but you would like to unmute your mic to ask that. So if you have it, please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I do have a question, but then I think there's a question before mine. So you want to address that first?
Yeah, I'm looking at the question now, so it's okay if I read it.
Yeah, okay.
It was actually a really good question.
Okay, so I proceed with my question, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so one question I have for me is that, like, let's say I consider myself as mentally stable or emotionally stable, but then like this friend of mine is not really stable. So when he or she tells me about like their experience and then like depressive experiences or what they are going through and during this period, then how do we tell them that, oh, you can really take time off for yourself without feeling guilty, and then without also letting them giving the feeling that oh, you're saying this because you are emotionally stable and not because you are in my shoes or something like that, or you don't experience the same feeling I do. Yeah. So
To me, I find that always we must not be condescending. My
Yes,
personal
absolutely.
experience is, we all have some struggle. Yeah, it's just a matter of those differences. Someone may be going through something more severe than what we are, so never ever be condescending. Just listen, and even to say, oh, I understand what you're going through is somehow condescending because you don't understand, really. So just listen and say that I always try to find something else, that we can do together, because I have my personal experience is with my children's music teacher. I've known him for more than 35 years. The time, my children are grown up now. This music teacher is now in his 50s. So in those days, he was very stern, a stern violin teacher. And he's become, he's an award-winning composer. But when I met him 8 years ago, he was actually homeless on the streets. My daughter was actually looking after, registering patients for our street clinic. Then suddenly she said, Mom, isn't that my violin teacher? Then I looked at him and he looked at me. Oh, Mrs. Hercus, you shouldn't be seeing me like this. Then I realized that he's actually bipolar. So since then, I've seen him again and again on the street. Recently he was there again, so now I know how to handle him, and he's very open about his problems. But each time, because he goes through a high and then he comes down low, and then his family doesn't want him anymore, but he's still creative. You give him the keyboards, my goodness, he can play beautifully, but he is bipolar. And when he comes and reaches out to me now, it's a little bit more open. Then, we try to find whatever it is to stabilize him. But not everyone is like that. And you don't have that kind of relationship with everyone. A friend may just be opening up. I also have a difficult friend who, the minute she reaches out to me, and if I say, come, let's do something, no, it's always a no. So you just have to listen, and you just say, what would you like to do? Better that way, I think, rather than never ever be condescending.
Yeah. And sometimes I think, some of us are not, might hesitate to actually talk to one of our friends or colleagues or family members. And in these situations, you can also just, give them a brochure or some information on where to seek help. And can be very upfront about it as well, and say that, I think you're undergoing some difficulty, but I have no idea what that is, and I might not be the right person to help you because I'm not equipped to do so. But I do know where you can get help. Help, and it's important that help is not judgmental, as Dato Munirah says. So in order to not to fall into these mind traps, we can also very gently guide people to where they can get help.
May I briefly add to this point, because I think it's a very important question. Sometimes, even if that person is our friend, that connection is yet to be built. She or he might be a close friend, but that connection, that chemistry is not yet built. And that comes with the other person willing to share too. I mean, the other person who's not necessarily feeling down mentally or not distressed. So if you give this idea to your friend that probably right now you're not, facing any issue, but give them this idea that you are open to talk about your feelings too. You can't really expect the other person to share with you and to talk with you, whenever they have problem, if they don't feel that you're going to do the same thing. So there is a bit of social exchange going on here, and I personally make sure that, because I'm very high on empathy. If something goes wrong with a friend, I really get distressed. So what I do is I make sure that if I have the same feeling, I share it with him. So there is a very safe, connection here. There's a very safe platform to share, and he or she knows that I will definitely do the same thing. I will definitely openly share my feelings, and I'm a very transparent person. So that's very, very important to be transparent. You too, not only expecting the other person to always open up and share. So if you don't build that, you can't really expect the other person to be open to you and share with you whatever you want to hear from them.
Thank you. Thank you for answering this question.
Okay, I hope that was helpful. And I think that very good sharing has also covered some of the following questions that are asked in the chat as well. So thanks guys for being so enthusiastic. I think we have tons of questions here. So just now there was a question from Edward. How do most of you draw boundaries in your professions as mental health practitioners so as to take care of yourself by understanding that we can't save everyone?
Who wants to answer that? Maybe Tamar should answer that question.
I think this is a very relevant question for, not just practitioners, but also for advocates as well. It's definitely not an easy job to do, to work with people with mental health issues.
Yeah, but that's why I think it's important to take care of yourself as well, because, people who get into this line of wanting to into the mental health area, or whether as advocates or mental health professionals, we tend to sometimes forget that we too have our limitations. We give too much of ourselves and realize that we have been completely drained of all energy and enthusiasm and the spirit to continue, and therefore it takes a toll on our own mental health as well. I mean, there are various strategies to sort of deal with this, by trying to strictly separate work from our personal life, have a routine, make sure that we don't take more on our plate than that what we can manage, and just like what we would advise our clients to reach out to people, we too must have a system in which we can reach out to our peers to get some support as well, and for our peers to tell us that, listen, that you are you are fatigued by this. You too have your limitations, and maintain boundaries. So these are challenges that we face ourselves, and we have seen that happening among frontliners in this COVID pandemic. Not just mental health professionals, but all sorts of people from different backgrounds who are frontliners as well. And this is a trait of humankind. There are people out there who will always want to give so much of themselves without understanding that they too are human, and they too have their limits. But this is a good question, I guess. And this is work in progress for most of us.
Andrew, I'm the weird 70-year-old who has to be on the ground to make myself feel normal.
I've come with you to your soup kitchen activities.
Yeah, Andrew, unfortunately, I have to be on the ground to make myself normal, and I always keep a lookout for those who are struggling or who look as though they're in need of help. Not because I feel that I'm stronger, no, because it helps me as well. It is one of those things, Salah, I don't know what it is. You're the good one. You're the clever one. Maybe you can analyze me. I don't know why. At my age, my friends say, come on, Muni, stay at home. But I think by going out, it helps me. I don't know what it is, Mark. You figure out, okay?
Keep going out, keep going out.
It's just that sometimes we think, and it happens to all of us, and I'm facing that situation now with some of my colleagues here as well, because people who get into this field somehow think that they're heroes, and this heroic nature takes over, And we just forget once in a while that we too have our limitations and we can be completely drained as well. And before that happens, I think we should take all the necessary precautions for that. I'm struggling here to introduce debriefing in our setup here. You know, like when you get into this CCU units for COVID, I'm trying to get the staff to say that there must be debriefing in the morning and in the evenings. It's good to compare notes and you know, get our feelings, our own anxieties out of this. In this particularly this COVID pandemic, you have frontliners who are worried every day whether they are going to be infected, whether they'll bring that infection and give it to their families. And then when they get back to their families and their homes, their families themselves are also looking at them in a very strange manner as to whether or not they should accept them. Because some of them have that difficulties. There are neighborhoods and communities who do not want a person who's been a frontliner to come into the neighborhood as well. There's a lot of anxiety here. And in the midst of all this, sometimes the biggest culprits are the health professionals themselves, because they think they are the heroes here and nothing will happen to them, and they have been, you know, mandated to serve their fellow human beings.
Thanks, Dr. Andrew. I think my very brief answer to that question, since you've shared so much, is self-awareness and self-care. I think just like other people, we are humans as well, and we have to be very aware of, you know, what we're going through internally. And we do see therapists as well, and we seek help as well. So whatever we teach our clients, I think that is something we practice as well, and it's a universal thing. So thanks everyone for the questions. Like Rachel said in the chat, that if your questions are not being able to address in the session due to time, don't worry, because we have noted them down. Perhaps we have time for just briefly one last question. And this question is really relevant to what's happening right now, from Dara Hagens from the US. So her question is, a lot of health treatment is going on telehealth now. How can a mental health consumer maximize visits with psychiatrist or counselor by video conferencing when human contact is so important in behavioral health care?
May I start?
Yes.
Please, Dr. Andrew, if you have a point.
No, not at all.
All right. So this is actually like a novel phenomenon in our time, and I remember reading Yalom's last work on his memoir on how I becoming myself. That's the title of the book. And he was mentioning that the first time he heard that such a thing actually exists, you know, like having therapy online or like through Skype and all, he was like, this is insane. Like this really doesn't work at all. And then the more he worked with people who were experts, you know, and who had experience in this field, who were doing like online therapy session, he was like, no, it's really working for people, you know. And I feel that we are getting used to it in a way. Our tendency to detect clues, emotional clues over online, even chatting, you know, even through chatting, you can detect like precise emotions sometimes. If you're a legendary chatter, I should say, you know, like if you type a lot. But there are actually like clues to get, you know, it's especially like if it's face-to-face, if it's like video cam, it's not that difficult. Of course, it cannot by no means replace a face-to-face interaction with a person, but this is the demand of our time, and we're trying to make the best of what we could do in this situation, minimizing the risk and optimizing the quality of what we have. And I feel that it's becoming a reality actually nowadays. As much as we want to make ourselves believe that, okay, online interaction is not real, it is becoming real. You know, they're like, let's meet in real life. What do you mean real life? This is real life nowadays. And we don't know, probably in 50 years, that's how most of our communication will be happening. And I feel like human beings have a very good tendency to adapt to new events and new situations. So it'll become a thing. Probably it's not at its best quality right now, but I can say we're adapting to it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, passion can be felt online too. When you speak, from your heart, it can be felt online as well. But if you're detached, it shows. You can't hide things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the type of words you use, it tells a lot about how you feel, and there are like a lot of other things, the way you say it, the way you convey your message. And young generation are getting good at this, because they were working with this since the beginning. So probably not very relatable to a generation, that got exposed to social media in later age. But I believe the young generation will cope very well with this, if not ideally, but very well at least.
Right. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Dato Munirah. Okay, so if there's nothing else to add, we are going to wrap up in a few minutes. We really apologized about the time delay. It's really hard to start with. There's so much interesting questions and sharings. So if you have any other questions, feel free to email us, and we will try to get back to you as soon as possible. So one of the purpose that we're here today is to actually get some tips and techniques on sharing. So before we wrap up, I would like to ask for a couple of minutes to share this with you. Okay, so this behavioral activation bingo is actually available on our Instagram and Facebook page. So what behavioral activation, just very, very briefly, is basically to help us to activate behaviors. So this chart or this bingo game is a very fun way to help us to start getting to do activities that we have not been doing with the goal of improving our mental health. So the rationale behind it is that when we start to engage in these activities, we notice positive change, and that will motivate us, to continue to do these activities, and that will contribute to our mental health. So if you want more information of it, please go to our Instagram and Facebook page, and there you will have the directions on how to do this. So if you want to share it out with your friends, you can do it, and then you can share it out on Instagram stories and share with your friends to just pass it forward. Next is also the safeguarding guidelines that we have, because MMOF is an event that deals a lot with young people. So we want to remember to stay safe for ourselves and also cultivate this culture, like Datuk Munirah and Dr. Andrew and even Salah say, of taking care of each other and looking after one another. So knowing that taking care of our mental health will actually help us to live productive and satisfying lives. And mental health struggles happens because of our environment, and they are quite real. They're very real, quite common, and highly treatable as well. So if you notice a friend in distress, what you can do, like what our panelists have said, is to provide that emotional support. Just listen, be compassionate, and also that practical support where you can be there. I think presence is really, really important, and that's what helps people know that they are not alone. What not to do is to make critical or judgmental comments or ignore or dismiss them, because that will make them feel worse about themselves. Yeah. Okay. So if you want to just have a quick check on your mental health, you can actually go to the NHS and check out the Your Mind Plan. So it's a very fun 5-question interactive quiz. And at the end of the quiz, you will receive tips and strategies on how you can improve your mental health. And these tips, the fun thing about it is that it is customized to your answers. So they actually check which area that you are weaker in or you might need more help in, and they give you suggestions based on that. So prevention is an early intervention is better than cure. This is what we've probably heard again and again and again. So if you need help or you know someone around you who needs that help, please feel free to just give a call to MMHA, CPCS, or even Befrienders KL. And sometimes when you call them, they will direct you to further help needed. So just reaching out is a very helpful thing. So I would want to pass the last couple of minutes to Rachel, our MC for today, to wrap up our webinar.
Right. Thank you, everyone, for all your really important discussions today. I think especially like all the participants definitely really got a lot from the panel's discussion today, because I've been receiving a lot of questions, and no worries, guys. I actually compiled most of them into a document. So we will just stay tuned to our social media pages as we will further answer these questions at a later time. All right, so I guess this marks the end of our session today. Sorry we ended a little bit later, but you know, there were a lot of important points brought up today, and yeah, I'm just really glad that we were all able to have this discussion. And thank you so much to all of our guest speakers, Tamar, Prof. Dr. Andrew, Dato Munirah, and also Salah, for all your amazing pointers that were hopefully helpful to everyone in caring for mental health. Yay! All right, so of course, also thank you to all of our participants for joining us here today. We really hope that you enjoyed the session, and we also hope that you will continue to share your whatever you've learned today with your family and friends, and also of course we hope that you continue to share the word about My Mind on Film, and also yeah, we hope that you really learned something today. And if you guys have any more questions, feel free to also reach out to us at our email or social media pages that I sent just now. And yeah, also do check out our Instagram and Facebook pages, where we will have the behavioral activation bingo that you guys can sort of take part in. And make sure to tag us on Instagram if you guys do complete the bingo and posts. All right, so if there are no further questions, you guys are now you guys can now leave the call. So take care and see you guys soon.
Bye.
Thanks so much, Rachel. And could I ask everyone to open their mics, give a round of applause for our panelists and our MC and our co-host, so we can all, if you open your mic, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
So
Thanks so much. And we can provide you with the behavioral activation tools. If you're not on social media, we can email it to you, or on our website as well if you're moderating your usage. Thanks, everybody.
thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.